this year? This year for the Brewers Cup. I was just like, I have an idea, but I feel for myself, it's more important to learn and grow by giving something to others. Like, I think I want to do coaching. So at the start of the year, I had a full routine finished because why not?
Yeah, exactly. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Coffee Made Me Do It podcast. My name is Dario and I'll be hosting most, if not all, of these episodes. Today I'm joined by my good friend Nicole Battefeld-Montgomery, a prolific coffee professional from Germany who has achieved amazing results on the competition stage both nationally and internationally and coached many competitors to great success. Nicole has an amazing career behind her and so much to look forward to, and we had a fantastic conversation about where coffee is right now, where it's going, and why we should all be very excited to be in this industry. I hope you enjoy this episode. Here's Nicole. Much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much for calling. I'm sorry that I was a little bit late.
Yeah, I think this, I don't know if this is accurate, but this is probably the first time that Jordan has been on some sort of coffee channel of any sort before you, hey?
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Yeah, I thought it's only fair, to at least put him first once in the coffee world. So.
Amazing.
How you doing?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting in my fridge here. So I'm sitting in the showroom in Berlin, and it snowed today, which is quite magical especially for Jordan, because he always looks outside and he's like, "Oh my God, snow!" I'm like, "Oh no, it's gonna be freezing."
Oh man, you were recently visiting family, is that right?
Yeah, we just visited my dad last week, and where I'm from is also very cute and very magical. And we met all of the 3 people that seem to be living there. So
Oh, that's
very
amazing.
different to Berlin.
What part of Germany is that?
The very far east. It's at the Polish border. So yeah, it's called Görlitz. It's very pretty. It's very small. It's very cute.
Is that where you grew up?
Yeah, that's where I lived until I moved to Berlin, actually. And I just realized today, I think I'm living here since like 14 years now, or 15.
Wow.
It's been a while.
It has been a while. It has been a while. And you've recently moved home. I've seen all the beautiful photos. Jordan says it's absolutely amazing. So,
Yeah.
have you guys settled in?
Yeah.
Lovely.
I mean, it's cute. Are we already recording?
Oh, listen, I've hit record, but we can cut out whatever. So
Okay. Like, is this already part?
yeah.
Yeah. No, it was actually a little bit shit. We got a letter from our landlord because we had this beautiful apartment with fixed rent and blah blah, and the renting in Berlin is terrible. But I'm sure Jordan told you. So yeah, we got a letter that said like, I want to move back into my own house, so you have to go. And I'm like, no. And I'm such a panicky person. Like, I like had to talk to myself being like, it's gonna be okay, it's gonna be chill. But I have zero chill. I am the most unchill person I know. So I started like panicking and like I searched for flats 24/7 the whole time. I went to so many flat viewings, and then that was, if I have a mission, that's my mission. So I found us a new flat within like a month, which is unheard of in Berlin.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Pure
Jeepers.
panic gets the job done.
Exactly, man. Exactly. Well, I think in some ways you and I are quite similar because when we decide to do something, we don't stop until it's done. And I can completely relate to that sort of mindset. My latest sort of adventure into new things has actually been getting some tattoos. So like,
So obviously you're covered now.
well, I mean, in the space of 3 weeks, I do have nine pieces now, and
Holy shit! No,
2
don't
trips to
do
Cape
that.
Town.
Don't do that.
Yeah, I know. It's 15 years of thinking about it, and then once you decide,
But you also have to tell everyone who's listening, who's thinking about getting a tattoo, that the body needs time to heal, and every tattoo should have at least 4 weeks of a break, so body can digest all of the color that went in. Right?
Exactly. Otherwise, if you have 6 pieces done in 2 days, you might end up with a rash all over your arm like I've just been dealing with over the last week. and it's not fun.
Disgusting.
Yeah, but the
All
tattoos are
right.
healing beautifully now, and I'm very happy with them. So it's all good.
Thanks. Yeah, that's great.
It's all good. Yeah,
All
yeah.
right. Shall we start from the start?
So let's start from the start, man. I think there's so many of our listeners will already know obviously who you are, and many of them will have heard Jordan's podcast, and he spoke about you quite a lot. And I think in the coffee world, there are very few people who have, especially in the competition scene, who have the kind of reach and influence you do. Um, so yeah, I think let's start at the beginning. Maybe you can give me a bit of your pre-coffee background, like
Yeah, sure.
childhood, and how did you end up getting into coffee, and what preceded that?
Yeah. So hello everyone. My name is Nicole. I am from a very small town in the east of Germany, and I grew up there. Very normal. Not much weird things have happened except for I actually grew up with I have a sister, and she is quite ill. She has no kidneys. She was born with no kidneys. It
Oh,
was
word.
weird. Um, but anyway, this as a family, kind of like, or as a person for me, it obviously defined a lot of who I am and what I'm like, why I am the way I am. So when she was a child, she always had to go to Berlin because that was the closest hospital to us that was like specialized in like illnesses like this, which was always 3 hours away. So that's how I got to know Berlin.
Wow.
And luckily, she had a transplantation in 1995. So she could spend a couple of her years growing up quite as a normal person. She's 4 years older than me. And that lasted until 2001. And then she's on dialysis ever since. So
Wow.
it's been over 25 years now. But obviously that does a lot of things to you when you're growing up. Like I grew up with a very sick sister who obviously was nearly dying every time something happened.
Yeah.
So I learned very quickly to come second, to not be the most important person, and to be self-sustaining, I guess, like to do things by myself.
Yeah.
That did a lot of with my personality when I was a child as well, because I demanded that my parents would listen to me because I'm like, I'm not sick, but I'm still important. So I became a very loud person, I would say.
Wow.
And when I was 16, I moved out of home and I finished my education. I have something that in Germany we call Abitur. I think it's like high school. And then I studied a little bit, but I studied something so incredibly boring. And I only studied it because you get money whilst you're studying. But I was sitting there being like, what am I doing here? This is so boring. So I didn't proceed my career as a I was actually learning the job that you go into like an office, like the person who runs the office in a city.
Oh,
That was what
wow.
I was studying. It's
Like
so
management.
flipping boring. um, so when this all didn't really work out, I was having a little side hustle as a barista in a tiny little cafe in the town that I'm from, and I loved it. We had a La Marzocco GB5. We had back in the days. It was 2007. We had still like the flappy mother grinders. That
Oh,
like
wow.
there was no grind on demand. There wasn't. It just wasn't a thing, and we didn't know that we had to weigh coffee. That also wasn't a thing. And I just fell in love with the mentality of people coming into a cafe because they like people sat down, had a coffee, and like they were reading the newspaper. It's a very special atmosphere that you don't really have in any other daytime or nighttime hospitality. Like the fact that people take time for themselves, they it's a little oasis, and also the saying that you have that let's go for a coffee. It just means so much more than drinking a beverage. It's like the consumption is you're very aware of what you're doing there. It's either very time for yourself or time for another person, but it's never, I have to eat. I have to, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's a very special atmosphere, and I kind of like fell in love with that. Also, the place was beautiful. The coffee machine, it was for me the first time that I could challenge myself, being like, oh, I want to learn how to make latte art because I saw it somewhere on the internet on my Microsoft Windows ME Millennium Edition that I had back in the days. um, and yeah, I taught myself how to do latte art, which was like a novelty back then. But as things go, I eventually had to learn a real job. Also, what I skipped now is like the owners of the cafe. They split up, unfortunately, and then they were like, "We are going to sell the cafe." And 20-year-old Nicole was devastated and said, "No, you can't. This is like my only happy place in the whole world." So I decided to buy it
Of course you did.
of course I did, with the zero money I had and with a business partner that I hardly knew, but he was older than me. So I was like, he must have money and be smart. Because obviously I wasn't either of those things. So I ran the cafe. I did all of the like labor, and he was supposed to be head of finance, and he completely flipped me over.
Oh
Um,
no.
yeah, to the point where the lady from the bank, she said like, "Do you have a moment to talk?" And I'm like, "Yeah, cool, sure." And she's like, "Did you know that you haven't been like paying any of your credit back?" And I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "But I have all of these like proof from him that he has." And she's like, "Yeah, that's fake."
Oh no.
So this lady, is one of those people that you've met once and they've changed the course of your life forever. But if I would ever meet this person again, I don't know how she looks like anymore. But she has literally saved my life because she talked to me and she's like, "You're 20 and you're throwing your life away and he's using you." So she let me out of all of the contracts.
Wow.
And
That's
once this
incredible.
was done, I was out of there. So this was my first experience as a self-employed person, and never, ever, ever, never, ever, ever will I ever think of having my own cafe. I think I'm so scarred.
I like how
I'm
you
like,
said I
no.
think because I said the same thing about never owning a cafe.
Yeah. So that was my short adventure in being a cafe owner with the age of 20. And then, yeah, I was just standing there being like, I have nothing. So what am I doing? And I did an apprenticeship as a chef because I'm like, there are many things in the world that I cannot do. And one of them is cooking. And I wanted to stay in hospitality. So I thought it's just smart to learn this skill because I don't know, why not?
Absolutely.
Um, so I started my apprenticeship in Görlitz and then moved to Berlin because I had the opportunity to continue my apprenticeship in Berlin at a much better restaurant. So I quickly packed up my things, moved, and finished my apprenticeship here in Berlin. And luckily, I had a lot of very good connections to very good restaurants. So I got taken over by a pretty known restaurant at the time, and the people that were working there were only working in Michelin star restaurants. So I had a lot of internships at other houses, and it was a very great experience. I definitely know how to cook now, which is good
That's
life skill.
amazing. Yeah, absolutely.
um, I learned how to deal with an awful lot of stress and pressure. I learned how to take abuse in the kitchen.
Wow.
I would say it was very much like one of those old school chefing shows where the people like throw pans at you if you
Oh
did a
my
mistake.
word.
And I've done a lot of mistakes, so there was a lot of flying
A lot
pans.
of flying pans. That's amazing.
um,
Even more pressure than behind the coffee bar.
yeah. Oh, you have no idea.
Wow, wow,
Like
wow.
being a chef is hard. It's very, very hard, and it's not for everyone. And at this point, I had to realize it's not for me. Like, I was never as good as the others, and it killed me. Like, I started 2 hours earlier than everyone, finished 2 hours later than everyone. So my days were 14 hours every day, and I was still not as good as the others, and it killed me. I just wasn't good enough in my head. Um, didn't really take in the calculation that all of the others that I was working with have already worked in this job for years and years and years in Michelin star restaurants. I was just like, they're better than me. I'm not as good as them, so I suck. Um, and so I think I did that for a year, tell myself that I really suck. And then I hit a wall and I was like, I am so, so unhappy and I'm so miserable. And the last time I was ever happy was in this tiny little cafe before I took it over, when I was just employed there. I was like 18 years old and I was just serving people coffee. And that was the last time I've been happy.
Wow.
So I was just like, I want to be happy again. So I need to go back to this. And I quit my job and I started working in a um, little coffee roastery in a district. Like, it was good, but it also showed me like I don't just want to work in any coffee roastery or any coffee shop. Like, I want to do this professionally and I want to do this good. So I found another roastery, which is Röststätte in Berlin.
Yes.
And I started working there. And from there on, my story in coffee actually really began, because I went there and I'm like, listen, I've had my own shop. I am a qualified chef. I worked in all of these restaurants. Like, I know my shit. Give me a job. And they're like, you know nothing. You are no one. You know nothing. And you're going to do the dishes here.
Wow.
I'm like, what? So I started doing the dishes there and maybe working at the register. And back then, the hierarchy in coffee shops was very different than it is now. So you really had to earn the position of being a head barista. And it took me a while. Like, I remember, I think I started working there in 2014. And then 2015, I was slowly allowed at the coffee machine, but only if the other barista wasn't there. Um, and only for closing, like when there's not enough, like when there's not so many customers. And then it was a Christmas party, and I was a little bit drunk, maybe. And it was just after the German Championships, where Erna Tosberg won the barista title. And she was like, I was just like, she's so cool. She makes it look so easy. Like, being on this stage, she's so charismatic. Like, our boss at this Christmas party said, like, can any one of you think of like competing ever? And I'm like, sure, of course, why not? And that was the start of how I got nailed into this, like, oh, you said you would do it, so you have to do it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess I do.
So
And I,
they went from not allowing you on the machine to you being the great hope for competition success for the company.
but yeah, but what is funny is like only was allowed to train on the machine in the training room, but still not as a barista at the bar. So, so when I actually did my very first coffee competition in 2016, we had no idea what we were doing. I placed second, and at this time, I still wasn't a all-time barista at the shop that I was working at.
Oh my word. Second best competition barista in Germany, but still not allowed to touch the machine.
I think after that I was.
I should hope
But
so.
it's like, it's so funny, like looking back at all of these things that have developed, like the way that I learned how to be a chef, the way that I learned how to do a job was very much like, you're worth nothing. You have to work your way up. Um, and you have to earn your position, like in any job that I've done. So going and seeing the baristas now, or the, like, even the positions that are open, like, we need a head barista now. I'm like, this would have never worked back then. Like, you like
Sure.
had to go through all of the stage steps. You had to know how to prepare food, because before you could do the register, before you could do this, and before you had to work every single step at the shop. So
Do you think it's
sometimes
better or worse
nowadays,
now?
yeah, oh, it's I don't know. I don't know if it's better or worse. Obviously, if you have learned something different, you would always say what we've learned was better,
Sure.
because you're more versatile, I would say. Um, but also, I got taught my job with a lot of "you're worth nothing," like with a lot of that's like mentally not very helpful, and it
Absolutely.
does something to you. Like, I still go to events and I'm like, I know nothing. Like, I am a worthless piece of schit that was lucky at a couple of events
Oh
and
my
won
word.
things that I shouldn't have won. You know, like there's still a lot of me that thinks I'm terrible, and at the same time, I'm so proud of what I've done. So I have these really bipolar. Like, either I stand there and I'm like, I'm the greatest. Look at me, how cool I am, or I'm like, I am worth nothing. So these two sides are very, very there. I think not a lot of people think that about me when they see me, because
Absolutely.
I always want to be very hopeful and like want to cheer people up, and I want people to be motivated to do this. But it took me a very long time, and it was a very rocky road for me to get there. And I think also for women, I would say it was harder 10 years ago. At least it really was for me. It really was for me to be taken serious and to be um recognized. So yeah, I
That's
think a lot of
amazing. I mean,
girls nowadays, yeah, they start this job and they're like, why are you being so dramatic? Why are you doing like women in coffee things, blah blah blah? Like, we're all treated equally. And I'm like, yes, you are, and you are now, and I'm so happy for you, and you're so lucky, because we weren't 10 years ago, and it's not that long ago.
no, it's not that long ago, and I
Yeah.
definitely don't think it's a universal situation. I don't think that is the case everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And your audience is obviously spread out globally. So the message of, your podcast, She the Barista, and all the work that you
Mm,
do on that front, it's just, I think it's so important. Um,
it really is.
because yes, one day we'd love to be in a position where we don't have to speak about this almost category of women in coffee as a thing on its own. It should just be people in coffee. But for right now, I think it's extremely important for us to recognize the fact that it is harder and it has been harder for women to progress in careers, and we need to recognize that.
Yeah, and sometimes I'm a little bit torn because, as you said, like I have quite a wide audience. Luckily, thank you everyone for if you do follow me on social media.
And if you don't, you should
Um,
start. The link is in the description.
thank you. Um, because I'm between this. I am obviously one of the most privileged people in the world, because I'm born into a society that gives you equal chances and equal rights. And I didn't have to do anything for this. Um, so when I talk about like strengthening women's rights from my position, it often sounds like, why are you complaining? You've got it all. Like, you've got most of it. I do still think there's a lot of things that we should improve, even if we say we've got it all, because we definitely don't. But when actually we too met in person this year in El Salvador, because you went to the origin trip for the Producer Roaster Forum,
Yeah.
and I also went there with my husband Jordan. Um, I was half of the time speechless, because remember that day when we went over the convention, and like I had no break.
You
Like,
couldn't move. You couldn't walk 2 meters without somebody approaching you to take a photo or to have a conversation, and it was just staggering. I think
I was looking around. I was like, I know that a couple of people know me, but like I was like, what is happening? And there were so many women that came to me and that said, you are such an inspiration, and that said, like, we want to compete, but we're not allowed. They are not allowed to be the barista. It's like when I started and I was not allowed at the coffee machine, and I'm like, it's still there. It still happens. Like the women in Colombia, in El Salvador, in Brazil, and like there's still this stigma that the barista is male and the girls are only at the register. And that's also what we've seen when we went to cafes. And I was just like, it's still so important, no matter where we are in this world, to talk about it and to share our experiences and to show them it is possible if you don't give up and if you are like persistent. If you're like, I want to achieve this and I'm going to prove you that I am just as good as my male colleagues. And we are talking about a barista job. We're not even talking about executive positions in like higher leading coffee brands. We're talking about being
Absolutely.
allowed at the coffee machine. It's ridiculous.
No, it is ridiculous. Do you think that? I mean, you've obviously achieved amazing success at the competitions on the competition stage in various categories. Do you think that competition has helped your career in coffee? Has it been something that you knew would help if you could achieve success in it? Or was it something that you were drawn to just because of your competitive nature, and the success that came has obviously subsequently elevated your reputation? Was it intentional?
So I would say at the start, I would have never said I'm a competitive nature. And I definitely started out doing it because I wanted to prove to people that I'm good in something. Like I'm not worthless. Like I can do things, especially coming from the kitchen where you get told in your face that you are terrible at what you do. So I was just like, I want to be good at least something. So when I placed good the first time, I was just like, well, I need to prove that I'm better than that. And then for my second championship, I worked so much and so hard, and I overdid it so extremely that I didn't take a day off for 4 months. Like Saturdays, Sundays in the shop, every single day in the shop. I had no break. And what resulted out of this was complete breakdown after the nationals, because when you win nationals, it's really just your ticket to worlds. And I was like already so done, and it was the wrong reason to compete, because
Okay.
it wasn't for the industry. It wasn't because I had something great to show. It was because I wanted to prove to others that I'm worth something. And once I understood that I am worth, it doesn't matter if I show it or not. Everyone is worth everything. Like,
Absolutely.
like it just had to go into my head. And then the next times I competed was more like, oh, now I had this chance to go to the Worlds, but I couldn't take it because I wasn't fit. I wasn't well. So then I was just like, oh, I want to compete because I want to go to the Worlds. And then I never really made it again in barista, and I got so frustrated that I just tried to explore other formats to be like, maybe I can be good at this at least. And then and that was actually very good for my personal growth, because I realized, oh, there's like different things that I can focus on. Like I can do coffee and good spirits and I could be quite good at this, or I could do Brewers Cup and be quite good at this. And then as years went by, and as the many times I competed, and also the many times I've lost, because that's something that we don't really talk about. We always say like, you've won things, but I also lost so many times.
Maybe that should be on the
Um,
resume. 2 times Brewers Cup champion, 7 times Brewers Cup loser, and
okay. Well, I always won the Brewers Cup that I took part in.
oh well, okay, all right, Nicole, okay.
No, no, barista. Like I competed like I think 5 times and I only won once.
And then you
And
coached in
we,
Brewers Cup the year after, and then the person you coached won as well. So your Brewers Cup records are pretty stellar.
oh yeah, but that coaching thing that happened a little bit earlier, and I was always very surprised. It was 2019 was the first time I coached someone, and that was when I competed in coffee and good spirits, and the Worlds was in Berlin, and uh, at this time we also had a German champion for Ibrik, for Chevre Ibrik, and it was Sinan, a friend of mine. and he is actually a photographer. He's one of the events photographers from the SCA, and he doesn't work in coffee. He's like, he likes coffee and he has a blog about it, but he doesn't really work in coffee. So we already like kind of like work together to get the national competition done, and it's like he did it and he came back to me, and I just told him like, at least you've done it now once, like good job. But we both knew like it's probably not going to be enough. And then he got announced as a winner, and we're like, what
Oh
the
my
flip.
word.
You have to go to the worlds now. And he's like, I can't. And I'm like, you have to. So I coached him to go to do his routine in Berlin at the Worlds. And he
Wow.
placed third in the world. And we were like, what just happened?
That's
Like he placed,
incredible.
yeah, that was ridiculous actually. Like he did it so good. And like yeah, it was great. So it's just like I just coached a photographer to become third in the world in e-brick. And then the next time I coached someone was 2021. I've heard on Instagram that a young Ukrainian came to Berlin and he had literally nothing, and he was the Ukrainian Coffee and Good Spirits champion. So I hit him up and I'm like, dude, if you need anything, like I've got a lot of equipment, I've got a training room that you could go to, like we can get you fit. Don't worry about it. And then I met him the first time in person, and I'm very pedantic sometimes. I'm like, so here's the plan, this is what we do, blah, 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 like take it or leave it. And he was just like, and because maybe it's because he's East European, like we both just like, yeah, okay, this is how we're gonna do it. Like, cool, 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 cool. And then this young Ukrainian was Vladi,
Yeah.
and we had exactly 2 weeks time to get him ready for the Worlds, which was in Milan in 2021. And he placed second in the world in Coffee and Good Spirits. And I was like, holy shit, I've got a third place and a second place now. I've never made it that far.
That's
um,
amazing.
and then I was just like, apparently I'm not that terrible at coaching. So for the Brewers Cup, when I didn't take part myself because I wanted to give back to the industry, I think a lot of my mindset changed after 2019, when I was like more relaxed, and I'm like, I don't have to compete to show anyone that I'm good enough because I think I am pretty okay. Um, and then I was just like, why do I want to compete? I want to compete because I want to give something to the industry. I want to make the industry maybe a tiny little bit better, or I have an interesting idea that I want to show on stage. And I luckily my mind continuously wanders, and I had these two things for the Brewers Cup 2 times, and I was lucky enough to show them on stage. And I'm like, yeah, cool. Like people take this and they actually learn something from it, or it actually is something, even if it's not a new tool or if it's not a new process, but I've like showed something that was valuable and interesting enough for the industry. And this is when
Absolutely.
I realized, like, I also can only say this now to people that want to compete, like, please don't compete because you want to win, because it's the wrong motivation. I've done this and it broke me and it was really terrible for my mental health. If you want to compete, ask, or if you have this like interest, ask yourself why you want to compete. Is there something that you want to show, that you want to showcase? Is there an idea you have that you want to bring on stage? Because also as a judge, you can tell like people that are there for themselves, or if there's a person that's there because of they want to like enrich the industry.
That's so
And
interesting. And I remember you saying that to us in Athens a few months ago.
yeah.
And I think, South Africans by nature are very competitive. And in my team, we have a group of very competitive people. So I think, with Fani specifically looking at comp prep, he's definitely got winning in mind. But after the
Mm,
conversation you had with him, the way he's speaking about competition is very different, and the way he's approaching,
mm,
his participation in the industry at large is very different as well. It's definitely
mm,
with the mindset of, okay, if I'm going to do something with my career, if I'm going to spend my time in the coffee industry, let me not just do it for myself, let me do it for other people, and that in turn
Mm.
will give me satisfaction as well,
Mm.
which
Yeah.
is very cool.
And exactly that's when I was like last year, or was it this year? This year for the Brewers Cup. I was just like, I have an idea, but I feel for myself it's more important to learn and grow by giving something to others. Like I think I want to do coaching. So at the start of the year, I had a full routine finished because why not?
Yeah, exactly.
But I decided not to take part, and to do like a practice class for people that wanted to compete in the Brewers Cup. And I had 4 people that took part in Germany. And I mainly like explained to them like compulsory, how to approach compulsory, how to approach their like presentation on stage, blah blah blah. And when it came to the German competition, we only had compulsory service, and only the 6 best went to the finals out of 22. And out of my 4 people that took the class, 3 people actually competed in the Brewers Cup. And all of those 3 people went to the finals. And I was just like, holy shit,
Yeah, that's
that's
amazing.
100% of the people
Exactly.
that I coached. They went to finals. And I was like, this is great.
So
And
if you're listening
Eric,
to this and you want to be in Brewers Cup, hit Nicole up.
yeah, that was like, it was so weird that even the judges afterwards, they came to me and they're like, what did you teach those boys? And I'm like, oh. um, and out of the 3 people that made it to the finals, of the guys that I like had this class with, Eric was the only one that and Jordan as well, we suggested the coffee and we made his flavor profiles and we helped him a little bit with the speech. So he ended up winning. And then I was like, oh, okay, cool. So you're very young. You haven't ever competed in something like this before. Like, I think it would be great if you have some help for Worlds as well. And I offered my help. And then we worked together for his Worlds routine.
Yeah.
And at the same time, Vladi, my good old friend who plays second in the world already, also wanted to compete in Brewers Cup. And I'm like, Vladi, I already know you. I know how we're working here. This is the presentation I already have finished since the start of the year. You're just going to do this word by word with this coffee. And he was like, yep, okay, thank you. So he went to Ukraine. And he helped his brother, which you explained very beautifully in the previous podcast, when you talk about Ruslan Demonenko, which is his younger brother. And Vladi ended up winning. Obviously, had a great performance that I wrote.
Thank you.
And Ruslan also ended up winning. And in the end, they both used the same coffee that I sourced for them, which gave me like, I don't know, like I had these 3 competitors and I'm like, I just helped 3 people to win titles that people like want to win their whole lifetime. And I was so proud of
That's
them.
amazing.
It just like but at the same time I was so proud, but I was just like super pedantic again. Okay, so this is the plan. Like now we have to do it like this. And in Athens, I mean, you've seen me. I was stressed out of my head. Like I was never so stressed that after this summer, I was like literally burned out for another 2 months after this. I couldn't get up. I was like,
Well, I
I was
can
in
only
physical
imagine. I
pain.
mean, it's not as if the preparation was smooth and easy. I mean, from the wrong coffee arriving to preparing, in a different language at a distance with air raid sirens going off in Ukraine, and it
Yeah,
wasn't exactly simple. So I can only
yeah.
imagine you must have been shattered.
Yeah. So after last year being like, I want to be Mother Teresa and help everyone else, I decided maybe it's actually easier for me if I compete myself. So
Only have to worry about
I,
one person.
yeah, exactly. So I enrolled again to compete next February or the upcoming February.
Brilliant.
And I'm going to do Brewers because I have another idea that I think I want to show on stage. And this is for me also the right mindset, because it's like, it's very hard to win twice, but I think it's like nearly impossible to win 3 times.
Sure.
It's like, I have to be very, very, I don't think I'm going to win. And I already have to prepare myself to be like, I'm going to be fine with this. I'm going to be okay with this. So I have a topic that really comes from, when you hear something and you're so fascinated by it, and it's all you talk about because it fascinates me. And I hope I can like share some of this fascination. And the other thing that I also wrote is like something that I absolutely have no idea about how to do it, and it's latte art. So I want to challenge myself, and I'm definitely not going to win latte art, but at least after this, I will be better with my shitty latte art.
And
And
that's like a
I
full
gotta
circle
learn
moment,
something.
because latte art was your first fascination in coffee, and
Yeah,
now you're competing in it. So that's really exciting.
exactly.
Please tell me you're pouring a pig.
Oh my god, I am trying. I am telling you, I am trying. But pigs are really hard.
I can pour
I'm
one thing, Nicole, and that's a tulip. And I pour it reasonably well, but that's as far as my skills go. So I can't even imagine what goes into pouring these intricate patterns, and it's truly
it's really
fascinating to
difficult.
me.
Yeah. It's like I never thought it's so difficult. It's like really, really difficult. Like I think I have like 2 patterns down now. I think I'm like having a bear and a cat, and just training those. But I really, really, really want to do a pig, and it's like it's like learning sport, and you're just really not good at it at the start. So it's just
Well,
like,
for our listeners, I mean, I don't actually know the reason behind this, but I've just picked up on your Instagram over time that there's a fascination with pigs, and that's the reason I asked if you're gonna pour a pig. What is it about pigs? What do you love so much?
what is there not to love? I cannot believe. So for full circle, after I was a chef, I did eat meat, but working as a chef in a very fancy, expensive restaurant, I've realized that the quality of meat, no matter how much you pay, is awful. So there's no such thing as like, yeah, but we only eat good meat when we go to expensive restaurants. All the meat you eat is shit. There's probably exceptions, but that was what I've realized. Like, I cannot have it with my ethic beliefs to eat an animal that has a life, because you're not eating meat, you're eating a life. Um, I know it's very controversial. Please don't feel guilty if you eat meat. Like, you do you, but I could not. And I have had a dog, and pigs are just so much smarter than dogs. They're like, a pig is as smart as a 3-year-old child, and it's mind blowing. They can do puzzles. They're so empathetic. They can cry. And they're so outgoing in their personalities. And what is there not to love about a pig? They're
That's
just the cutest
amazing.
things ever. The Christmas pigs. Oh, I think I've got about 9 pig ornaments on my tree now. It's going pretty good.
That's amazing. So you got a couple of weeks to go, and then you can really start sharing your Christmas pigs.
Yes.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Do you have any pig tattoos?
Lots. Yeah.
Oh, really? Hey.
Yeah. I've tattooed myself also a couple of
I was
pigs.
gonna
Yeah.
say, haven't you started tattooing yourself now?
Oh, during lockdown, because I was really bored.
That's amazing.
I started tattooing myself, and then everyone around me. Um, but yeah, I've tattooed myself probably like 5 pigs.
Oh my
Because
word.
they're just
So
cute.
is that the next career development for Nicole? It's going to be a tattoo
Pig tattoo.
studio.
Pig tattoos only.
Pig tattoos only, exactly. Christmas pigs in December?
Oh, yeah.
That would be amazing. That would be incredible. So okay, so you're competing in Brewers Cup and Latte Art next year. That's very, very exciting.
Mm.
I know
Same
that's
weekend.
same weekend. Oh my goodness. So what is the
Yeah.
format for Latte Art? I actually don't know.
So, it's going to be really difficult because we only do 1 round and that's it. So I hope that me being on stage a couple of times already is going to be my benefit. But like, you get so shaky. You have 1 round. It's called the art bar, where you just do 1 pattern. And I think the judging panel is 3 people, and one of them is not a coffee person. So your
Oh wow.
pattern must be so pretty, so intricate, but also so easy to see what it's supposed to be.
Okay.
That a person that hasn't seen latte art before knows, oh yeah, that's a pig,
And is it free
obviously.
pour?
And it's no, it can be with edging.
Okay. Okay. So you've obviously got like a favorite jug. Do you get to choose what milk you're using? Do you get to choose what
I think
coffee
they
you're
have a
using?
sponsor.
Okay.
They have sponsor for both. They have sponsor for coffee and they have sponsor for milk. I'm just going to be YOLOing it, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
I know Brewers Cup will definitely be your number one priority, I would imagine.
I don't want to do latte art lighthearted, to
Okay.
be honest. Like, I
So
think I've
you're
got
gonna
like
give it a full go.
I'm giving it a fair bit of training time as well. Like, I would say I'm training every day about like 1.5 hours
Okay.
in latte art just to repeat the patterns. Also, if you ever wonder how to train for latte art and you don't want to spend tons of milk when training, obviously I have to train with milk at times, but the 1 hour that I do every day, I practice with they're called BCB, Barista Carl's Blend. It's like latte art drops.
Okay.
Um, and they're really like they behave like milk. You just add a couple of drops to water. That's an inside tip for everyone who wants to practice their
Ah,
latte art.
that's amazing.
Um,
I've actually never heard of that product. We just use like a dishwashing liquid.
yeah,
Um,
I think they're from Canada.
okay,
They're
that's
not
amazing.
European. Yeah. And they're a bit better than dishwashing liquid because they last longer in the cup.
Okay,
So you can actually train patterns with it, which is pretty good. Um, yeah.
that's amazing.
But the good thing about latte art is it's not with this whole like text. Like you don't have to be
Yes,
like, hello
exactly.
judges, this is the farm, this is the altitude, this is the variety. You just go on stage and have a good time, I think. Or at least that's how
Well,
I'm gonna do
you
it.
have a time. Hopefully, it's good.
Mm, correct.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I think, yeah, I'm really fascinated to see what you bring to the Brewers Cup stage this coming season. I always enjoy watching your presentations.
Oh, thank you.
And obviously we met for the first time when you were competing at Worlds, and yeah,
Oh yeah, right. Yeah,
yeah,
true.
in Milan.
Yeah,
And I actually visited you at Rostata, and you brewed me your comp
yeah,
coffee in the prep or in the training center.
yeah.
It was an amazing coffee. It was if I
Oh, that
remember
was
correctly,
such a
it
beautiful
was a
coffee.
CM from Project Origin. Was it an
Yeah,
Ethiopian coffee?
yeah.
Yeah, it
The
was amazing.
Ethiopia Koki from Primrose.
Very purple.
Um, it was just such a beautiful coffee, and I actually tried it the other day again because I've got it frozen still at the freezer at Reststätte, and it's still it lost a tiny little bit, but still there, and still like makes me feel like I want to have it again. I want
Wow.
to compete with it again, but it's like it's never been quite as good as this harvest
Sure.
that
That's
I've
really
had.
interesting.
Um, but yeah, it's a very nostalgic feeling because also when you do so many competitions, you always have to source again and source again and source again, and you're like sometimes you're just like I just want to have this one coffee again that I knew performed well, and then you get all of the samples and then like having to let go
Yeah,
because the samples aren't because it's like a natural product like every year is going to be a little bit different and like every
exactly.
year the fermentation is a little bit different and even if you use CM it's like the profile is there but like the nuances are maybe slightly different so having to let go of a coffee is really hard
Yeah,
sometimes.
exactly. I can imagine. You know, I think back to a coffee that Fani competed with at the semi-final round last year, um, and it was a Typica from Volcan Azul in Costa Rica, and
Mm.
probably I don't know. It was a very complex coffee, not an easy competition coffee, but it was just so damn good, and he absolutely smashed it with that coffee. And I think since then we've been like, oh my gosh, we just want to have that coffee again. Like, where can we find something that's similar? And um, as you say, you've just got to let go and move on and open your mind to new possibilities and new coffees.
Mm.
Yeah, it's very tricky. It's very tricky. I am very fortunate at the moment. We have a very deep lineup in the roastery, and
Oh, you've got all of the goodies.
oh my goodness, I promise you, I don't think I've drunk anything less than like an 88 point coffee personally in the last like I don't know, 2 months, because I'm constantly
Mm.
QCing what's coming out of the Stronghold.
Mm.
And I still need to send you some Stronghold coffee, because I know that you're not convinced that it's a great roasting machine, but I think we're getting
Don't
some
you
good
say
results.
that. Don't say that. No, I think it's for every machine there's a different approach, and sometimes the machine is so new on the market that I just haven't had a coffee with the perfect approach to the
Exactly.
roaster.
No, you're spot on. And I think when we spoke about that, it was some time ago. And I think,
Yeah.
as you say, it's so new on the market, and it's so. I think it's also been adopted quite early by a lot of people who are new to roasting. So you've got a new machine with a new roaster and a
Mm.
new brand,
Mm.
and the combination of all those new things just leads to a little bit of maybe inconsistency. But I must tell you, this year the worst coffee I've roasted has been on the Stronghold, and the best coffee I've roasted has been on the Stronghold. It's been a wild learning curve. I've had some shocking roasts
Taste the
where
rainbow.
I literally, the other day, I ejected a batch of coffee about 4 minutes in, just coming through color change, because I was so far off what I knew would even be a possible profile,
Mm.
that I was like, I'm not wasting the next 4 minutes. This is going to be undrinkable, release. And so we've had some shockers, but we haven't shipped any shocking coffee. We've only shipped coffee we've been thrilled with. And yeah, I've got to send you some stuff, man. We've got some fun coffees in the roastery at the moment.
Yeah, please do. But it's
Yeah.
also that's what we had this summer when Vladi was training here in the training center in Berlin, because we tried a coffee. I had a suggestion to a coffee, and it was very good. But obviously, you also stay like open-minded, and you're like, maybe sometimes you get surprised by like something that just came in. So he got all of these samples. Every time before competition season, like you get a lot of samples, and then we've tried all of these coffees, and we were at a point where we were so picky, and we had to look at each other, and we're like, we are just drinking 90 points coffee since like a month.
Let's go get some supermarket coffee and just recalibrate,
Yeah. And we were getting so unfair. We were getting so like luckily it was always only the two of us talking, but like there was a cup in front of you and it was a beautiful cup. Like it might have not been as bright as we wanted it to be. So I was just like, nah. And
This is
then
terrible. This is a terrible
is this
Panama geisha that's
terrible?
perfectly roasted.
Or even when the boys did the practice runs and they were like brewing and then they like messed something up and then like they gave it to me. I'm like, this tastes disgusting. There was a terrible brew. It's like obviously not disgusting. I was just being very, very harsh on them. Yeah.
But they both went on to do really, really well. So the technique works, obviously, Nicole.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing, man. So what is next? I mean, I know obviously competition is a big part of the
Mm.
focus, but there's so much happening in coffee, and both you and Jordan are just so plugged into the international coffee scene. Jordan through his writing and his work that he's doing, and obviously yourself like being so connected into the industry in different areas. I'm always fascinated to hear from other coffee professionals where you think specialty's going. Where do you think the biggest opportunities in the market exist? And pretty much what excites you, what is the next step?
I think if I would know that, I'd be already a millionaire.
Sure. Yeah, predict the future, hey?
Because then I would invest in that and then I'd be sorted. But
Exactly.
I really don't know.
I mean,
It's
I'm reading a lot about how the specialty industry's, possibly regressing.
yes,
We've been pushing forward from a quality perspective for a long time, and now there seems to be this like shift towards convenience again,
yes.
and a lot
Cold brew is like
cold
everywhere you
brew.
go. Cold coffee
Exactly.
drinks is like there's like I think 70% of drank coffee drinks are now cold drinks, and I'm like,
Wow.
where's this coming from? Like, what's happening? Um, I feel I always want to be very positive and I always want to be very excited about everything that's up. So I think what we've lost in this progress was the communication. Like we ran too far ahead for anyone to catch up with us.
from a
Even
consumer
people,
perspective.
yeah, and even people in the industry are like,
Sure.
this is so advanced stuff. Like I have cuppings with people from the industry, and they're like, oh my god, what is this coffee? And I'm like, well, this is like already super common and super old now. And they're like, what? I've never tried anything like this. And I always realize that I'm like galloping like miles ahead, and what I've always promised myself, what I want to do on stage, it's like I want to reach out and give a hand to people and explain things. um, and I think that's where we've lost it a little bit. And I think that might be the future of specialty might be talking to our commodity consumers and going back to like, we need to educate and we need to make them understand, and we need to make normal coffee better. We need to make normal customers more aware, because we still haven't done this even in the slightest. There's still people that don't know what a coffee fruit looks like. There's still people that think if you buy an espresso machine, it does everything by itself. There's still people that don't understand what's the difference between an espresso and a filter coffee.
Exactly.
Some people still don't understand that, and you're like, wow, this is shocking, this is terrible. Like, what have we done? How could we be so blind to the consumers that make the 90% of the market? Like, we always complain that the specialty sector is so small, but obviously it's so small because we don't communicate it well. We still don't get everyone on board. So I think the specialty future will be, yeah, going back to the normal consumer,
So
and like
going broader instead of narrower in a way.
yeah, and also finally opening our gates and being okay with like bigger companies to cooperate with us.
Sure.
Like, if a Starbucks has intentions to do a light roast, why do we hate it so much? Maybe that might be the gateway for a customer to try a light roast, and then they'll try another light roast, and then they'll end up in a smaller roastery that actually has a different quality of beans as well. Like, why do we hate these things so much if that might be our gateway to get people interested?
So we've had these events now happening for the last 2 years in South Africa. It's called the Specialty Coffee Expo, and it's organized by friends of mine, Jason and Suzanne. I've only got to know them through the expo, and we've been fortunate enough to participate in Johannesburg and in Cape Town, and it's been really, really interesting because it's not a coffee expo for coffee professionals. It's a coffee expo for consumers, and the number of people we have coming up to our stand at these events, saying like, I'm keen to try something, we're at the specialty expo, so like, wow me, give me something that I wouldn't have had before. And it's been amazing to take somebody who was convinced that they only loved dark roasted coffee, and you serve them like, I mean, we were pushing some extremes. This year, the coffee of choice on filter was actually a Janssen Natural Geisha from Panama, which is definitely not an every person coffee. Some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it. But it was a coffee that was so well received by the general audience, the general public. And we're talking about thousands of people now who are coming to experience these coffees. And it just occurred to me that I've been to these trade shows, I've been to, Host and World of Coffee and these types of events where it's coffee professionals talking to coffee professionals to a large extent. We're not making the circle bigger in those examples. We're just keeping it the same size. But when we start putting these events together where we really, really are just trying to connect with people who are embarrassed to not know the difference between, as you said, espresso and filter, and say to them, guys, that's okay. It's not a problem. Like we were there just a few years ago. Welcome. Let's have a conversation. And I think I agree with you. I think that's where the next phase of growth is going to come from.
Which, yeah,
It's very
which
exciting.
for a couple of people might sound like a setback, but like, you've just said big trade shows, and I have just been to a big trade show in Europe. The Host, you've said the name already, and it's the biggest hospitality trade show in Europe. And there, I've tried a coffee from a gigantic Italian roastery, which is quite famous, and they have had a specialty selection from Diego Bermudez from Finca Paraíso in Colombia. And I'm like,
Wow.
what? How? And then I tried it and I was like, holy moly, like maybe not the roast profile I would have chosen, but
Sure.
very good, very, very excellent. And they showed it on this convention. I was like, yeah, you go, girl. Like
That's amazing.
this is a great collab, and this is like no one should feel shame in this collab. No incredible producer should feel like he's selling out, because I've heard this. They're like, oh, he's selling out. I'm like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. He's cooperating with a bigger brand and he's making his coffee, his quality visible to a broader audience. And I love
Exactly.
that. And that's good. It's really good. And yeah.
That is really exciting. I love the industry. I love the product. I love the variety of, topics we get to focus on every day. When you get bored of brewing, you can start focusing on roasting. When you get bored of roasting, you can start focusing on green sourcing or marketing
Mm,
or whatever the case may
mm.
be. I definitely think that if you're creative and open-minded, the coffee industry is never going to be boring. And to see creativity coming from big, old, established roasteries, looking at like young, inventive producers, I think it can only be a good thing.
I think so too. And also, it's like there's so much progress all the time in the coffee industry. And even if we go in like research and development, we'll see like agricultural values are changing over time. So the need to adapt is there all the time. And bigger companies just have a bigger support for us to do so.
Exactly.
Like there's been different articles that I read lately of being like, are bigger brands good for the industry? Are they bad for the industry? I mean, they're the people, they're the ones investing in research and like in developing maybe a plant that's more uh, stable when it comes to climate change. Like they are shaping the industry in their own way. So
100%. I mean, Volcan Azul in Costa Rica is a great example. When we were visiting earlier this year, Alejo was telling us how a lot of the plants that they have in their nursery they come from the Starbucks farm, and Starbucks gives these plants away to local farmers. They want to help make the industry better, and a lot of the hybrid experimentation has happened at the Starbucks farm in Costa Rica, and it's awesome to see the big companies giving back to the industry. And yes, I'm sure that all the practices in these companies is not always perfect, but I think they get a very bad rap when actually they've done so much to help, even at the pointy end of the specialty world. We're all influenced by what happens at that level as well.
yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's very cool, Nicole. And I think, the future for the coffee industry is bright. We can look to other industries like wine and food and say, wow, okay, these industries are a lot more established than coffee, and they're still growing. They're still reinventing themselves. They're still exciting, and we're at
Mm.
the precipice, I feel, of this wider acceptance of specialty coffee and this wider audience that we get to communicate with and sell to, and it's very exciting.
It really is. And we also mustn't forget it's been a couple of rough years for people to invest in like a product that's getting more and more expensive.
Yep,
So
exactly.
don't be disheartened if you don't have your like super specialty geeky customers all the time. It's okay.
Exactly. Exactly. Just focus on what you're doing, know who you are and what you do as a business or as a professional, and do it to
Mm.
the absolute best of your ability. I think broad broad strokes don't often get it done. I think that there is something to be said for knowing what it is that you do and doing it really, really well. Not everybody has to sell Janssen Geisha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also not everyone, also now one time going back to the competition, not everyone has to use it on stage. Like I've had so many competitors now come and they're like, oh, we need to have a 90 plus, we need to have this, we need to have that, because that's what the people compete with. And then when we compete with Eric's coffee, it was a beautiful Peruvian geisha that you could buy off the shelf, and everyone's just like, how did this win? How? And then giving the people the perspective back, it's like, it was just a nice coffee. Like, let's be just honest, if you have a coffee that you really like and it's nice in your opinion, why shouldn't you go on stage with a washed canyon?
Exactly.
I'd love to have a washed canyon on stage in the moment. I'm waiting desperately for the new Canyon and Ethiopian coffees to arrive because I've got big hopes for them.
Absolutely.
Um, but yeah,
No, it's an
the
exciting
need
time.
to go, the need to go to producers to have big names, like they have big names and it has a reason, but they also have big prices. So
Absolutely. And I
yeah,
mean, so many success stories. I think of Dale Harris's story about using a Salvadorian coffee to win. It definitely wasn't, the coffee that was in fashion at that time, but he loved it
mm,
so much and he worked so hard. He practiced the set over 100 times to deliver it as a drinking experience, as a competition experience at the highest level that he could. And it was enough to win the world championships. It might not have been a big brand name coffee, but certainly after he won, it became a big brand name coffee.
yeah.
And that's generally how these things happen. The brand names happen the year after the big success. Um, but yeah,
The coffee that I used for the worlds in Coffee and Good Spirits, one of them was our normal natural Brazil that we sell on the shelf
that's amazing.
for €8 for 250 grams. That's
Yeah,
like that was one of my drinks was made with this coffee, and then the coffee that I've used in Milan for my first World Brewers Cup, where I just didn't make the next round. Um, was an Ethiopian. Like, yes, it was a CM, but like it was by far the cheapest coffee in the top 10.
sure.
And everyone was just like, "What, really?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's a great coffee."
Yeah, it's amazing. Judge the cup and you know what coffee you like, and then put together an amazing set with that coffee instead of just going brand name first.
And that was
Um,
also a very interesting realization for me when I did judge, because I did judge the Brewers Cup um, in the last year, was that it's all about the cup. I literally judged in a country where I couldn't understand the people if they wouldn't speak English, and a lot of them didn't speak an English set. So all I had left was the cup. So
yeah,
they told me roughly the story, and they told me roughly all of the markers, if I can give full points on that. But all the rest in the Brewers Cup was all just the cup in front of you.
that's amazing. Yeah, and that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. And I
Yeah.
think, it's maybe some sort of closing thoughts here, Nicole, because I don't want to keep you all day, but some ideas around, you know, we're telling stories of the farmers. We're talking about traceability and then sustainability and transparent trade and so on and so forth. What I'm noticing though is that our customers care first and foremost about what's in front of them, the cup quality. And if the coffee was traded well and it was, produced by a famous producer, that's great. But at the end of the day, we're judging the cup quality. We're judging what's in the cup in front of us. And I think that as coffee professionals, we can lose sight of that sometimes. We get caught up in the big brand names and having to buy the Panama geishas and so on and so forth, whether it's for competition or to have on your menu to make it look fancy or whatever the case may be. But then a lot of roasteries and brewers aren't doing a great job with the product itself. And people are ending up having a poor experience with a big brand name coffee. Rather buy what you're excited about and treat it really, really well and give people an amazing experience.
I think um, it comes from a position where like I've had coffee that was terribly roasted or terribly brewed, but I also have a little bit of a difference to that because I have the experience that you don't really buy a product, you buy the people. Like
Okay,
if I buy something, I usually buy it because I've got it recommended or because I like the person. And like if I go to a coffee shop, and let's be honest, like I'd say 90% of the coffee shops I go to, I could do the coffee at home, maybe a little bit better.
sure.
Because not because I'm better in doing it, but because I have more time, because maybe I have different tools at home. Maybe my coffee is perfectly aged and I have a freezer, or maybe the beans I have because I have like a frozen menu at home. So maybe that's something might be that's better. But if I go into a coffee shop and I have a terrible service or the service is not great, but I have great coffee, I don't enjoy the coffee as much as if the coffee was maybe not as great, but the service was exceptional. And the atmosphere was exceptional. And the way it's got delivered to me was exceptional. I'd be like, you have made this experience for me. You have made this coffee great for me. Like, even if it's not perfectly done or if it wasn't perfectly roasted, like I definitely come back because I like you. And I like the way that you're representing this coffee. So I think what we are sometimes underestimating is like the power that we have to make a coffee stand out, because it
Through
is the
our
coffee and the cup
service.
quality, but it is also us. It is
Yeah.
stories that we tell on, and it's the service that we provide. And if all of that matches, obviously, we're all, if everyone is listening, is probably interested in specialty coffee. So obviously, I think it's a given that we don't take good beans and just make them terrible. Like, obviously, we're not roasting in the pan, and
Absolutely.
obviously, we're like probably know what a recipe is. So let's just take that as a given. But then just relying on being like, this is a great cup and this is a great cup profile and this is enough. I think that sometimes that is where we've lost. That is where we ran ahead and where we've lost the connection to the normal customer, because we stood there and we're like, the cup is great. Here is 3 words how to describe this cup, and then I'm going to leave you alone. That's not it. That's not enough. That's not me in my tiny little coffee shop when I was 20. That's not where I fell in love with it. I fell in love with it because of the atmosphere. I knew I had a terrible floppy grinder and probably not the best coffee, but I still fell in love with the topic of coffee and with the people that come and the interactions that happen in and around in cafes and around the topic of coffee. So that for me is specialty.
I love that so much. That is absolutely awesome. And it is the essence of what we're trying to do. At the end of the day, we want to give people great experiences.
Yeah.
Nicole, amazing, man. Jeepers, I'm so grateful for your
Yeah.
time. It's been such a great conversation. I think the next one for us is to get Fani, myself, you, and Jordan at the very least. Maybe even the whole team, who knows, onto a call at once. And it might not even be a recording we can release to the public. We don't know which way it's gonna go.
We're just going to do a live and everyone's going to yell in.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's been really nice that you invited me to this podcast.
Of course.
I'm listening to every episode. It's very interesting so far.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's been an absolute thrill to speak to you. And I have to ask you one favor, though, because it's a long trip for me to do this in person. But when you get home, please give Jordan a big hug for me. I miss my friend.
I will.
Amazing, Nicole.
I'm very glad you don't live on the same continent, because you would be his secret affair.
Yeah, you never know. Hey, he's a beautiful man. Let's be honest.
I know.
Oh no, you guys are both amazing, and I really appreciate the friendship and obviously the professional relationship as well. But yeah, thank you for sharing. I know our listeners are going to love this, and let's do it again sometime.
Yeah. Thank you all for listening and have a wonderful day.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Coffee Made Me Do It podcast. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Nicole. I always enjoy our chats and hearing her insights into this amazing industry we call specialty coffee. If you enjoyed this, please share it with your friends and family. We are working hard to grow this platform, and we look forward to hosting you or seeing you in the next one. Ciao.